I know what you're thinking. Peter, you're doing another museum tour? Well, yeah, and let me explain why. As of right now when I'm recording this, it is March 13th, and to be honest, I'm a little bit short of content. The plan for this time of year was to do some winter stuff, things like skiing and snowshoeing, and I did make a couple of skating videos. Also indoor things that can be done on rainy winter days in Vancouver, which includes museums like this one, the Museum of Vancouver. The museum started in 1894, which makes this museum 129 years old, which means they have a lot of stuff to display, which also means their display cases are packed full of stuff. And instead of displaying all these items separately, they put them all together to tell a story or to form a scenario, which I think is a much better way to present history. For instance, this Union Board display highlights some of the issues that were important to workers back in the day, as well as showing a collection of materials and ribbons that they used. This Skilled Workers Tools display houses a switchboard and a time clock, among other things, that a growing and thriving city needs. It's divided up into 4 separate galleries, which the first one covering from the late 1800s to 1920. Gateway to the Pacific highlights things like the transcontinental train, real estate boom, and unfortunately racism, primarily to Chinese Canadians. The second section, called Boom, Bust, and War, highlights the Roaring Twenties up into the Second World War. This time period also includes Vancouver becoming the 3rd largest city in Canada through amalgamation of the neighborhoods, and the hobo jungles as a result of the stock market crash. Next up is my personal favorite, the gallery, which highlights the 50s and lots of neon. The 60s and 70s are highlighted in the last section titled, You Say You Want a Revolution. This obviously has to do with hippies and activism, primarily in the Kitsilano area. Speaking of Kitsilano, you gotta love these swimsuits. For fun and giggles, I found a chart that shows the housing prices over the years. In 1920, you could buy a brand new house for $6,300. When adjusted for inflation and other factors, that same house would now be worth $100,000 today. So compare that to today's average in Vancouver, which is $1.2 million. And that's why I live in an apartment. And it's also why you should subscribe to my channel. It would really help a guy out. The Depression was great for those who had a lot of money and bought a ton of property that most people had foreclosed on. And the others, well, they end up living in hobo jungles like this one that popped up around the city. And if you were one of the ones that still had a lot of money, you visited the beauty shop and got your regular dose of gossip.
They've opened up a new aquarium at the Old English Bay Bathhouse. I heard that. Ronald took me to the opening the other day.
Not gonna lie, that looks pretty freaky. This gallery ends with the beginning of World War II, and because of Pearl Harbor, racism turned its eye towards the Japanese Canadians, who were then rounded up and sent to internment camps. Definitely not a fun part of the museum. Alright, on to my favorite, the 50s gallery. Neon and cars is probably what best describes the 50s. Remember the White Spot drive-in car service? I sure do. I remember eating like a monkey because the door-to-door window tray only came down to my neck. Vancouver was known as the neon capital of North America, helped in part from this 80-foot high Bolmac sign that was the largest freestanding sign in North America in 1958. Sadly, civic politics spelled the end of excessive neon in Vancouver. Here's a tidbit of information about me. I've never been to the Commodore. That might make a good video. We had one of these, and a round picture black and white TV with me as a remote control. And that ashtray completes the scene. The hippie era ends this history tour. They embraced activism, Greenpeace, they said yes to transit and no to freeways.
Just peace and love and music and everyone enjoying each other.
We almost had a full-blown freeway system right into downtown Vancouver. It consisted of a third crossing over the Burrard Inlet and a ring road in the downtown core. So that's it for the Vancouver galleries, but there are a few more areas that I have not covered yet. The museum begins with a display that changes on a regular basis. Right now it features local designer Tobias Wong, and the display is called the Tobias Wong Project. Following this curved arrow to the right, you'll come to the gallery of A Seat at the Table. Through first-hand stories, these tales take you through the success and hardships that Chinese Canadians experienced coming to Greater Vancouver. And you'll learn about bubble tea. Taking the path to the right would have led you through this section. This section gives a brief history of the Indigenous people who lived here before Vancouver became Vancouver. This will be the subject of a different video. I hope you enjoyed the tour. There's lots of things to see and read about.